In just 25 seconds, what started as morning television pleasantries would explode into one of the most savage on-air confrontations in British TV history. Those 47 seconds saw Ricky Gervais systematically dismantle Lorraine Kelly's carefully constructed persona, exposing her thin skin and entitled attitude in a way that left viewers absolutely stunned. The comedian didn't just challenge the host, he obliterated her fake smile and revealed the petulant, oversensitive person lurking beneath the saccharine morning TV facade. The tension was palpable from the moment Gervais walked onto the brightly lit set. Lorraine Kelly, perched behind her desk with that trademark grin plastered across her face, had clearly done her homework. She'd prepared what she thought would be clever gotcha moments, questions designed to put the notoriously sharp-tongued comedian on the defensive. What she hadn't prepared for was Gervais seeing right through her amateur hour tactics. "So, Ricky," Lorraine began, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "you've been quite vocal about cancel culture lately. Some might say you're just bitter because people don't find your jokes funny anymore." The question hung in the air like a challenge, her eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of someone who thought they'd just delivered a knockout punch. Gervais didn't even blink. He leaned back in his chair, that familiar smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Some might say that, Lorraine. They'd be wrong, obviously. But some might say it. Just like some might say you're just a morning TV presenter desperately trying to stay relevant by stirring up controversy." His tone was conversational, almost friendly, which made the words hit even harder. The fake smile flickered on Lorraine's face for just a moment before she caught herself. "Well, I think our viewers would disagree with that assessment," she said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "We've been Britain's favorite morning show for years." "Have you, though?" Gervais tilted his head, genuinely curious. "I mean, is that something you actually believe, or is that just what your PR team tells you to say? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're desperately clinging to a format that died about 10 years ago." The comment struck a nerve. Lorraine's posture stiffened, and for a brief moment, the mask slipped completely. "I'm sorry, but I don't think you're in any position to lecture anyone about staying relevant. When was the last time you had a hit show that wasn't just you recycling the same tired atheist rants?" Gervais laughed, a genuine sound of delight. "Oh, we're doing this then? Brilliant. I love it when people show their true colors on live television. It's so much more entertaining than the usual scripted bollocks." The production team behind the cameras could feel the atmosphere shifting. What had started as a potentially difficult interview was rapidly becoming something else entirely. Lorraine Kelly, who prided herself on being unflappable, was visibly rattled. Her breathing had quickened, and the forced smile was becoming increasingly strained. "I think we should move on," she said, shuffling her notes with unnecessary force. "Let's talk about your new project instead." "No, let's not," Gervais replied calmly. "Let's talk about what just happened. You tried to ambush me with some half-arsed question about cancel culture, probably hoping I'd get defensive so you could have your little moment. But when I turned it around on you, suddenly you want to change the subject. That's not very professional, is it?" Lorraine's jaw tightened. "I'm conducting this interview, and I decide what we discuss." "Are you, though? Conducting it, I mean." Gervais leaned forward slightly, his voice taking on that deceptively gentle tone that anyone familiar with his work would recognize as dangerous. "Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're having a bit of a meltdown because someone didn't play along with your little game." The silence that followed was deafening. Viewers at home could practically feel the tension crackling through their screens. Lorraine Kelly, the woman who had built her career on being warm and approachable, was sitting rigid with barely controlled fury. Her hands were clenched in her lap, knuckles white with the effort of maintaining composure. "I am not having a meltdown," she said through gritted teeth, each word carefully measured. "Right." Gervais nodded thoughtfully. "So this is you in complete control then? This tense, defensive version of yourself? Because I have to say, it's fascinating to watch. You're like a different person when someone doesn't automatically defer to your morning TV queen status." The camera operators exchanged glances, uncertain whether they should keep rolling or cut to commercial. The director in the control room was frozen, watching this slow-motion car crash unfold with a mixture of horror and professional fascination. Lorraine took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain her composure. I think perhaps you're projecting, Ricky. You seem very hostile today. Hostile? Gervais's eyebrows shot up. I'm just responding to your energy, love. You came out swinging with that cancel culture question, trying to make me look like some bitter has-been. I simply pointed out that if we're talking about people clinging to relevance, you might want to look in the mirror first. The insult landed with surgical precision. Lorraine's face flushed red, and for a moment, she looked genuinely hurt. But instead of acknowledging the hit, she doubled down on her defensiveness. I don't have to sit here and be insulted by someone who thinks being controversial is a substitute for talent, she snapped, her Scottish accent becoming more pronounced as her emotions took over. And there it was, the moment when pretense finally crumbled completely, when morning television's sweetheart revealed the petty, vindictive person she really was beneath all that manufactured warmth. The silence stretched between them like a loaded gun. Gervais sat there, completely unfazed by Lorraine's outburst, actually looking more entertained than ever. His eyes sparkled with the kind of malicious glee that came from watching someone self-destruct in real time. There she is, he said softly, his voice carrying easily across the suddenly quiet studio. The real Lorraine Kelly. Not the sugar-sweet morning TV puppet, but the nasty little person who can't handle being challenged. How refreshing. Lorraine's hands were visibly shaking now. Whether from anger or humiliation, it was impossible to tell. You don't know anything about me, she hissed, leaning forward aggressively. You waltz in here with your smug superiority complex, thinking you can just tear people down for your own amusement. I'm not tearing you down, love, Gervais replied with mock innocence. You're doing that all by yourself. I'm just sitting here watching you have what appears to be some sort of professional breakdown because someone didn't kiss your arse on your own show. The production team was in full panic mode now. The floor manager was making frantic hand signals, trying to get Lorraine's attention, but she was completely locked onto Gervais, her fury consuming everything else in the room. The camera operators kept rolling, professional instinct overriding their better judgment. Breakdown? Lorraine's voice cracked slightly on the word. You think this is a breakdown? This is me finally telling you what everyone's been thinking for years, that you're nothing but a bitter, mean-spirited bully who mistakes cruelty for comedy. Gervais clapped his hands together once, the sound sharp and mocking. Oh, brilliant! Now we're getting somewhere. Tell me more about what everyone thinks, Lorraine, because from my experience, when someone says everyone thinks, they usually mean, I think but I'm too cowardly to own it. Fine, she exploded, all pretense of professionalism finally abandoned. I think you're a vicious little man who gets off on making people uncomfortable. I think you hide behind this whole I'm just telling the truth persona because it gives you license to be as horrible as you want without consequences. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Around the studio, crew members stood frozen, witnessing something that would undoubtedly become television legend, but not in the way anyone had planned. Gervais leaned back in his chair, completely at ease despite the venom being directed at him. That's better, much more honest. Though I have to say, calling me vicious while you're sitting there with murder in your eyes is quite rich. You look like you want to reach across this desk and scratch my eyes out. Don't tempt me, Lorraine snarled, her Scottish accent now thick as treacle. You come on my show, insult my work, question my professionalism, and then act like I'm the problem for responding to it. Your work? Gervais's eyebrow shot up in genuine surprise. Is that what we're calling this? Work? I thought this was just some elaborate therapy session where you get paid to have conversations with people who are infinitely more interesting than you are. That was the line that broke her completely. Lorraine shot to her feet so quickly that her chair rolled backward, hitting the backdrop with a loud crash. Get out, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Get the fuck out of my studio right now. The studio erupted in chaos. Camera operators zoomed in instinctively, capturing every nuance of the meltdown. The floor manager was frantically trying to signal for a commercial break, but the damage was already done. Britain's beloved morning television host had just sworn on live television, something that hadn't happened in the show's entire history. Gervais remained seated, looking up at Lorraine with what could only be described as pure delight. Oh, we're swearing now? On morning television? How wonderfully unprofessional of you. Though, I have to say, it suits you much better than that fake sweetness you usually peddle. I said get out, Lorraine screamed, pointing toward the exit with a trembling finger. Her face was beet red, tears of rage and humiliation threatening to spill over. The transformation from composed morning show host to unhinged harridan was complete and devastating. "No," Gervais said simply, settling more comfortably into his chair. "I don't think I will. See, this is live television, and this is the most honest you've been in years. Why would I leave now when it's just getting interesting?" The defiance pushed Lorraine over the edge completely. "Security!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with the strain. "Security! Get him out of here!" But even as she called for help, Gervais just sat there, completely unruffled, watching her with the fascination of a scientist observing a particularly volatile chemical reaction. The contrast between his calm amusement and her complete loss of control was stark and deeply unsettling. Two security guards appeared at the edge of the set, looking uncertain about how to proceed. This wasn't exactly a normal situation. Removing a guest during a live broadcast was unprecedented territory, especially when that guest was sitting calmly in his chair while the host screamed like a banshee. "Remove him!" Lorraine commanded, her voice hoarse from shouting. "I want him off my set immediately!" The guards looked between each other, then at Gervais, who raised his hands in mock surrender. "Gentlemen," he said conversationally, "I'd hate for you to have to manhandle me on live television. Think about how that would look in the headlines tomorrow. Security forcibly removed comedian for having opinion on morning TV." One of the guards, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, approached hesitantly. "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave." "Of course you are." Gervais nodded understandingly. "Because the host of this show has just had a complete psychological breakdown, because someone didn't automatically worship at the altar of her manufactured personality. But here's the thing, and viewers at home will want to pay attention to this bit. I haven't done anything wrong. I've simply responded to her questions honestly, and she's lost her absolute shit because she couldn't handle the answers." "Stop talking," Lorraine shrieked, her composure completely shattered. "Just shut up and leave. You're a horrible, toxic person, and I don't want you contaminating my show any longer." Gervais turned to look directly into the main camera, addressing the audience with the practiced ease of someone who had been performing for decades. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing here is what happens when someone who spent years hiding behind a fake persona gets confronted with reality. This woman has built an entire career on being nice, Lorraine Kelly, but the moment someone challenges that facade, she turns into this screaming, vindictive creature you see before you." The camera operator, following professional instinct, kept the shot wide to capture both Gervais's calm delivery and Lorraine's continued meltdown in the background. It was compelling television in the most uncomfortable way possible. "You think you're so clever," Lorraine spat, tears of rage now freely flowing down her cheeks. "You think you can just waltz in here and destroy people for your own entertainment? Well, congratulations, you've succeeded. Are you happy now?" For the first time since the confrontation began, Gervais's expression softened slightly, not with sympathy, but with something that might have been pity. "Happy? No, Lorraine. I'm not happy. I'm disappointed. I came here expecting to have a conversation with a professional broadcaster, and instead, I've watched you implode because you couldn't handle basic pushback. This isn't entertainment for me. It's just sad." The words hit harder than any of his previous barbs. Lorraine stood there, mascara running, chest heaving, looking like the aftermath of a natural disaster. The pity in his voice was somehow more devastating than the mockery had been. "But here's the thing," Gervais continued, rising gracefully from his chair. "I'm going to do what you should have done 20 minutes ago. I'm going to be the adult in the room." He straightened his jacket and looked directly at Lorraine. "Thank you for having me on your show. I'm sorry it ended this way, but perhaps next time you might consider not opening with an ambush if you can't handle the consequences." The studio fell silent except for Lorraine's ragged breathing. Even the crew seemed to be holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Gervais turned back to the camera one final time. "To everyone watching at home, this is what happens when celebrity meets reality. Some people rise to the occasion, and others." He gestured vaguely toward Lorraine. "Don't. I'll see myself out." And with that, he walked off the set with the same casual confidence he'd entered with. leaving behind a trail of devastation and a host who looked like she'd been through a psychological blender. Lorraine stood frozen for several seconds, watching him leave, before suddenly seeming to remember where she was. "We'll be right back after this commercial break," she mumbled into her microphone, her voice barely audible. But the damage was done. The facade was broken, the mask had slipped completely, and millions of viewers had witnessed the real Lorraine Kelly in all her petty, vindictive glory. As the cameras finally cut away, Lorraine collapsed back into her chair, the weight of what had just happened hitting her like a freight train. She had invited Ricky Gervais onto her show thinking she could score points off him, but instead, she had revealed herself to be everything she had always claimed to be above: unprofessional, nasty, and utterly unable to handle criticism. The comedian had walked away victorious without even raising his voice, leaving behind a host whose career would never quite recover from the morning she forgot how to pretend to be nice.